For TRICHOMES.com, I'm Jarod Duggins, and this is the Careers in Cannabis podcast. On this show, we sit down with staffing agencies, cannabis companies, and other industry professionals to discuss employment opportunities in the burgeoning cannabis industry. It's Croptober, and from harvesting to punching in numbers to the METRC system, it's busy season in the cannabis industry. Jobs, whether seasonal, temporary, or career-oriented, are beginning to sprout at record pace. The displacement and/or outright complete loss of traditional industry jobs has a lot of people looking toward cannabis as an option for the first time, so competition is becoming fierce. Our next guest works with one of the longest-standing staffing agencies in cannabis and can help you narrow the field, so to speak. Finding the right opportunity starts with looking in the right place. Today we speak with Kara Bradford, co-founder of Viridian Staffing. Kara, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Pleasure to have you. We're still here. We're getting into the fall season, yet we have not outrun this global uncertainty surrounding COVID. We're here during election season, of which I choose to stay middle of the road, and let's just put it that way. All that stuff aside, how have you been holding up through this time period, and where are you staying?
Good. I'm doing well. I have to say I miss hugs. Like that has been the number one thing that has just been so hard is I'm from the Midwest originally, so I'm a hugger. And just miss, being able to see friends and give them hugs and their little ones are growing up and getting to all my kind of little nieces and nephews and getting to see them. And that's probably been the most difficult part. But other than that, been good, just staying busy. And with cannabis being deemed essential, there hasn't really been much of a slowdown. I am currently up in Seattle, Washington, enjoying a lovely fall day here, but pre-COVID would spend time going back and forth between Washington and Southern California, and also some time in Portland as well. So really up and down the West Coast quite a bit during the year pre-COVID. But we're making it through, I think, just like everyone else is, and trying to stay positive and hope that this time next year that we're all back seeing one another in person and getting to give hugs and handshakes and everything again.
Yeah, definitely. We're all dealing with life on life's terms at the moment, and I can definitely identify with missing the hugs. Personally, the extended family, that type of stuff too. We're missing out on a lot of those family gatherings, as I know everyone is. Some people forego it, but those with elders in the family and those that have conditions that might make them a bit more susceptible to what they're identifying as COVID now, it puts us all in a tough position. So, yeah, you bring up a good point. I do miss the hugs too.
Yeah, that's probably number one. Followed also, I love going to the theater and not being able to go see plays live has been difficult as well. So I look forward to getting back into the theater again.
Well, yeah, we'll see how that looks.
Yes.
Professional sports being any indicator, it does not look like public gatherings are going to be the same for a
No,
while.
especially indoor public gatherings.
Yeah, I was lucky enough. One of the last things we did publicly was go to a comedy show. And yeah, same thing. We were in a theater type setting in Inland Empire here. Yeah, that's not going to happen again for a while. But like you said, cannabis has been deemed essential, and you have chosen a career in cannabis. So
Yes.
prior to that, there was life before cannabis. But as we were discussing before this, you have chosen a life in staffing and HR. You want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I've been recruiting at this point for over 20 years, which I can't believe it's been that long, but it has. It flies by. But I knew that I was leaning towards a career in HR pretty early on. I was the typical started college student and had no idea what I wanted to do. So first I thought I was going to be a newscaster. And then I changed my mind and actually went to a school, one of the best theater schools in the country, and was going to major in theater and realized that that wasn't going to really pay the bills probably. And so went into, of course, the next um, best thing that would pay so much more, being teaching, um, which unfortunately is not the case, and
Right.
decided after that uh, probably a career in human resources. Doing something in human resources was going to be the direction that I was going to head in. Now, I didn't realize that recruiting within there's several different areas of HR, and recruiting and staffing are one of those areas that kind of roll up into human resources. And I didn't really realize that recruiting was going to be my niche until I actually went to see a career coach, and which, if you haven't seen a career coach before and you're kind of wondering what you want to do, I highly recommend them. It's, do your research and make sure you find a career coach that has great references. But I am greatly indebted to this career coach for helping me to figure out from my passions and what I really like to do, what area of HR was going to be the best for me. And in college, I worked full time, went to school full time, and was very involved with my sorority and also our National Panhellenic Council, which is the organization that oversees the Panhellenic organizations on campus. And I was vice president of recruitment for that organization. And then, so I went to my career coach and I said, I really like this recruiting, event planning type thing. And then my job that I had that I worked full time at was working for a finance company where I was responsible for finding people who didn't want to be found because they owed the finance company some money. And I said, I also really love this finding people, like the whole puzzle of trying to find people that don't want to be found. I said, if that could only be a career. And she was like, well, actually it is. And so I got my start in university recruiting and admissions. I got to put those teaching classes to work, and I was the recruiter for the teacher certification programs at a university, and then got contacted by a large Fortune 100 company and asked to come interview with them for a recruiting position, and the rest is history. I've been doing recruiting in-house corporate and some agency recruiting, but for the most house in-house corporate for companies in food and beverage, consumer packaged goods, medical devices, entertainment, pharmaceuticals, tech, you name it. I've worked in many different industries doing in-house corporate recruiting. And then about back in 2013, decided to come over into the cannabis space when my business partner and I realized that no one was doing professional recruiting. And we looked around, and to our knowledge, we were not able to find anyone doing human resources. All the companies we looked at didn't even have internal in-house human resources professionals, and saw the need and started Viridian Staffing.
Wow. Uh, Definitely, seeing the writing on the wall based upon an emerging industry there. And, you brought up something as far as the career coach. That's an aspect that really hadn't been brought up before. I know we've talked about different things on the show as to how to directionalize your search and or sharpen up your resume, but just like you're talking about, this is a coming of age industry, so such things as HR and programs like that are just starting to be put in place. But there isn't such thing as a cannabis career coach. That's I don't know. It's not that I know of anyway. How do you define that? Because essentially, you got half the industry still pissed off that you're calling people master growers, and it's like, so how do you make that a category to get hired on for? But I mean, realistically, it is, and so within that, but yeah, you brought up a great point. Is I think it's getting high time that that someone took up that role as far as defining the different career aspects in cannabis.
Yeah, and what I found is great about some of the practitioners who have been in cannabis for years is that career coach may not be in their title, but you do have some of these cultivators who have been cultivating for years, and some of the extraction uh, leads of heads of extraction who have been doing that for years, who if you reach out to them, form a relationship with them, and ask them to help mentor you, and they kind of act as an ad hoc recruit or career coach to some extent, but their expertise is in that one area. So, if you're talking to, if you ask someone to be your mentor who is a grower or a head of cultivation, and you realize that, like myself, I have trouble keeping a peace lily alive, let alone a cannabis plant. Uh, that that's just not the area that you should be in. Then you have to go out and find another mentor. So, but I have found that there are a lot of individuals in this industry who are very giving and kind with their time. And when people come in and ask if they'll act as a mentor or provide advice about being in that career, they offer that, which is nice. So,
No, yeah, no, there's definitely some great insight there because, yeah, with the lack of the establishment as far as the industry goes, it's tough for anyone to do that. Opposite of coming from a background in operation and seeing how it's expanding and where the demands are being created. So a bit more of a mentor role, more so than the broad strokes, is a great way to start for sure. Find someone that you know involved in cannabis. We're lucky down here in California. That's a growing number of people, but it's cannabis is becoming a more normalized topic. So yeah, reach out to the people you know. That's a good suggestion.
yeah, absolutely. And I find a lot of people are when we first started the company, almost no one was on LinkedIn, but a lot of individuals are seem to be, on LinkedIn now or coming over to LinkedIn and feel more comfortable about having what their background and experience is listed on LinkedIn. And so you can go onto LinkedIn and just do a simple search for cannabis and uh, growers or cultivators and have a list pop up of people that you can start trying to connect with and form relationships with.
Definitely more great insights as well. And you said you've been around as Viridian Staffing since 2013.
Yes.
Um, what would you say are Viridian's strong points? What are your specialties when it comes down to staffing?
Right. So we are a global recruiting and HR consulting firm. So we do everything from direct placement, which a company comes to us and let's say that they need a director of marketing, and we will help find and help to place into that company their director of marketing. So we'll do everything from direct placement to temporary staffing, and then so the temporary staffing would be more of that on-demand model, harvest workers. This time of year is our busiest, most wonderful time of the year because it's harvest season, and we have a lot of temporary workers who are out right now that are harvesting, trimming, uh, processing, packaging, up and down the West Coast and then all the way out east as well. But so we offer the temporary staffing as well. And then we also offer HR consulting. So this would be if a company comes in and let's say that they're a situation has come up and they need to do an investigation of some kind into a human resource related issue. We have HR practitioners that spread out throughout the country and also in Canada that can come in and help out in terms of offering HR consulting to help guide them through that investigation process. If you need training on harassment or OSHA standards, so safety standards, we have HR consultants and trainers that we can help send out to help with that. So, since we've been around in the industry longer than anyone, we actually have a very broad network that of HR practitioners and recruiters that are not just US based. We are, based globally. And so we have companies coming to us from Europe asking us to do a compensation analysis for what a director of cultivation should make in Portugal or Denmark. And we're able to provide those services because of the network of our HR practitioners globally.
Oh, that's fantastic. And being a resource as far as when cannabis companies need to implement stuff like that and build those departments out, it's less industry, it's less common knowledge, it's less of an industry standard since we're just becoming an industry to know that type of thing. So yeah, to have someone to turn to on when to implement, HR, corporate training, that kind of stuff, harassment training, because in most cases it needs to be done, especially when you're past a certain threshold of employees and that type of thing.
Yeah, and what is really nice to see is that so when we first started Viridian, recruiting's always been my passion, as we discussed earlier. That's really what my specialty and focus is. But I do have an MBA in HR as well. And when we first started Viridian, we were really excited to do a lot of recruiting, but it ended up the first couple years was a lot more uh, work in the HR space than it was in the recruiting and staffing space. It wasn't probably until about 2015, maybe 2016, that we really started seeing companies coming to us more for the staffing and recruiting needs that they were having, and versus just kind of one-offs that we worked on before that. So it's been really nice to see companies now developing out their HR and their recruiting teams because we didn't see really a focus in the HR profession for a very long time in the cannabis industry. So I'm excited to not be by myself any longer and to have a lot of HR practitioners who have brought their expertise into the industry as well. So, it's not just me trying to answer questions anymore. There's a network, and a lot of companies have in-house HR and recruiters now as well.
No, and it's great. It's
Yeah,
again part of the industry evolving and moving up. You talked about how it's Croptober and a lot of
it is. Yes.
temporary offerings are there. But in the way of Viridian, the staffing side of things, do you have any exciting placements or offerings that you want to talk about?
Oh, goodness. We have a lot of exciting placements and offerings. If individuals are, so for individuals who are really looking to get into the industry, this is a great time of year to do that. And especially this year, because in years past, uh, we've seen workers that come in from other countries that work in more of the legacy market
Mhm.
than the regulated market. And this year, those workers aren't able to come into the country because of COVID. So there is a dearth of workers, especially in Northern California, Southern Oregon area. And if you don't have experience, it's a great year to think about trying to get a job in cannabis and getting your foot in the door. And if you're wanting to do harvesting, trimming, packaging, And maybe your dream and aspiration is to do something more than that, but if you at least want to get your foot in the door, I would recommend reaching out to us, applying, because we do have a lot of opportunities up and down the West Coast. We do have temporary opportunities in the Midwest, East, and Florida as well, but a lot of our opportunities this specific time of year for fall are, West Coast, Colorado, um, just because that's where your outdoor grow operations are at typically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so that for temporary positions, great way to get in. For more of your full-time permanent opportunities, I have a couple really great opportunities up in Washington State in extraction and edibles. I have a really exciting opportunity in Illinois for a head of cultivation. And then one of the trends that I'm excited to see um, finally starting. So when COVID hit, we saw a lot of layoffs happen. Some of those were COVID related. Some of them arguably were other reasons, but um, some were COVID related. And so unfortunately, we saw a lot of those layoffs in that director to C-suite level happening back during that time. And so I'm very excited that we're finally starting to see at least a reasonable number of these director to C-suite positions coming open again. And so we have CEO positions open on the West Coast and CFO positions in the Midwest that have opened up. And we have a few of each. So it's exciting to see those coming back after that kind of mass layoff that happened in April and May of this year.
Definitely. It's yeah, the things are starting to get back, and companies, it's showing that companies are getting a little less worried about that standing, because back in April, I mean, really, we still didn't know how essential was essential when it came to cannabis, and the given fact is that it's still federally illicit on that level. So this is the states versus the federal at that point. We've got all sorts of ongoing cases and that kind of thing. So I think what really the positive that happened through this pandemic for us here in the US is it's really established cannabis as something that's going to be here tomorrow. And yeah, we can start now counting on a possible career in cannabis now, and that's really, I think, something that got solidified here is the guessing game is no longer a guessing game. It's here to stay in my mind anyway.
Absolutely. And we were somewhat concerned that back when those layoffs started happening, I had actually known that they had been happening for months prior to that, just because um, I do keep my finger on the pulse of. I'm in contact with most of the HR professionals in the industry, as I used to head up the NCIA's HR committee, and so was aware of some of these uh, some of these layoffs happening months before that. And a lot of it, some of it was COVID, but some of it is also just where companies are in the life cycle of their organization, and also where the state is in its regulation process. And that often determines, how many positions people are going to need to fill or not fill as well. So COVID definitely gave us a bit of a scare, but we're excited to see the upward trend that's we've started seeing probably just in the past like 3 to 4 weeks of these director to C-suite positions opening up again.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And just so that our listeners, it will be in our bio, and attached links will be somewhere wherever they're listening to this podcast. But do you want to go ahead and offer up your URL and or social handles where they can find this easy?
absolutely. So we are viridianstaffing.com, just spelled out, but Viridian is VIRIDIAN staffing.com. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all under the handle Viridian Staff, and also on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for that information. And Kara, thank you so much for joining us today and updating us from the side of Viridian Staffing, the first staffing agency in the cannabis industry over here. And thanks so much for bringing your wealth of knowledge and your choice to be in staffing and HR to the industry. It's all these types of contributions that help solidify our next steps is in becoming an industry. So thanks for all the hard work you and your partner have put in to date.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. It's a very exciting industry to be a part of, and I highly recommend to any of your listeners out there that they definitely consider a career in this space, because it is a lot of fun. It is a lot of hard work, but it is a lot of fun as well, and it's very exciting to be a part of something like the cannabis industry.
I definitely concur with that thought. And with that, I definitely bid you adieu. And thank you so much again for joining the show, Kara. I look forward to having you back at some point, and we'll definitely stay in touch with what kind of current offerings you have in the future.
Excellent. Thank you. Would love to come back.
All right. Well, thanks again, and stay safe.
Thanks. You too. Take care.
You can follow our series, Careers in Cannabis, as well as more great shows like this one at TRICHOMES.com. If you're a member of the cannabis community and you have a story you want to share with us, reach out. You can reach the show via careersincannabis@TRICHOMES.com. Please take a second to subscribe to the podcast and write a review. It really helps others find the show. For TRICHOMES.com, I'm Jarod Duggins. Be well, and thank you for listening.